Hello, this is Mike at GameFromScratch, and welcome back to our ongoing Unreal Engine 2D game tutorial series. Today we are going to be talking about audio. It's actually a really complicated subject that we are going to cover very quickly. Basically, there's a whole lot of audio stuff built into Unreal Engine 4 that we don't need. Spatial audio, stuff for 7.1 surround sound, etc. A lot of things in it basically for environmental 3D games that for a 2D game are sort of overkill. Now, if you want to dive in more, we're going to actually touch on the basis. So it's just a matter of you going a step deeper. But when you're done this, we will get the basics down, and you'll be able to go from there. So once again, we're going to be covering audio today on Unreal Engine. Let me just start off a new project here. Audio demo, and go. This project assumes that you have seen all the previous projects, of course. I'm going to be throwing together a quick UMG UI to fire off the different audio events. So I assume you've already done this, that you already know how to do these things. So if I'm doing something that does not seem familiar to you, be sure to watch the prior tutorials or read the prior tutorials on GameFromScratch.com. Once again, there is a text-based version of this tutorial available for you there. Alright, so let's create a new scene, save it right away, new map. Alright. And now let's add a UI. Call it my UI. I'm very original in my naming. And we'll start with a couple of buttons for now. Button 1 we shall call play wind. You'll understand why in a moment. Let's just jack that size up a little bit. Works for me. And let's just a slightly better name. And copy and paste. And we shall dub the play Thunder. And again, give it a slightly better name. Alright, so there's our basic UI. We need to set it so that it actually displays, mind you. Let's do a save and a compile. Push that down. Actually, let's dock that guy. So, alright, so our level blueprint. We simply want to wire it up so that that UI shows when we start the game. And that's just a matter of create widget. And it's my UI. And we're also going to want to make the mouse cursor visible. So get player controller, like so. Alright, so finally we need to, oops, come on, add to viewport. Like so. Again, this was all covered in a previous tutorial, that's why I'm just kind of scamming through it pretty quick. And finally, we want to do a set show show mouse cursor. Our target is our player controller, and yes, we want to show it. Alright, so that's our basic UI being displayed in theory. Oh, what am I doing wrong here? Oh, I gotta wire on my widget. Alright, let's compile that. Okay, so I'll come down, we run our game. There's our widget. Doesn't do anything yet, but we at least have some code to work with. So now we're going to look at the audio aspects of Unreal Engine. It's quite simple. It works on the same level that working with sprites works. You import your audio files, and it creates a sound wave class for you. Now, you might be asking yourself, what formats does it support? And that's where it's very, very easy. It supports WAVE. That's it. WAVE. WAVE is generally an uncompressed format. Not always, but it is generally an uncompressed format. I think Windows started it. It's universally available just about everywhere. It supports waves in, it prefers 22 and 44.1 kilohertz sound in 16-bit, and they can either be stereo or mono. Mono being single channel, stereo being has a left and a right channel. Now, if you need to convert, if you have an MP3 file you want to bring in as a soundtrack, if you've got what other formats are there? OGG, so OGG Vorbis, whatever. You want to bring any of these formats in, they need to be in WAV. Now, this is a guide that you should download right away. It's a program called Audacity, and it allows you to do these conversions. For example, we're going to be using a bunch of WAV files I already downloaded from freesound.org. You can use whatever you want from wherever you're getting them, but let me just go there on my desktop. Okay, it's supposed to be on a disposable drive or something. Pick up. All right, 1 second. All right, finally timed out. Let's go here, and what did I call them? Samples. So these, for example, are the 4 sound files I'm potentially going to use. They're all waves, but some of them could potentially be stereo, and I only wanted them mono. And I've actually already converted them using Audacity to do so. But this could just as easily be files in OGG or MP3 format that I wanted to convert into WAV, and this is where Audacity shines. And let me just show you with, say, Thunder. All right, we'll make a copy. And here you can see we've got these 2 channels. So this is your left and your right. Now, actually, they're not identical. So we will be losing some information by doing this. But as you can see, it's stereo. If we want to go in, you can come in here and actually delete out one of the 2 channels. But in this case, we've actually got slightly different sounds on each one. So we actually want to merge them together. But Audacity can also handle this. So tracks, stereo track to mono. Why are you not giving me the option? Didn't have it selected. So you now have a mono track that is an amalgamation of the left and right channel. So this is the kind of stuff that Audacity does very, very well. And this is a completely free open source program. So if you do need to get your file formats into WAV format in a way that's nicely compatible, download Audacity. I think it's available on many platforms. It's completely free. It works wonderfully, and it will bring you your source files in. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, wait a minute, this thing only works for the WAV files. These files are going to be absolutely huge. Well, that's because when you're doing asset generation, who cares how big your files are, realistically? Developers generally have a ton of space available. You don't really want to work in non-optimal source formats when it comes down to it. You compress your assets for deployment. Well, the nice thing is Unreal Engine is actually doing all that stuff for you. Each different platform has different requirements for their audio, and it takes care of it. So when your soundtrack is ultimately generated, or your sound effects are generated, or whatever, from Unreal Engine, it's doing all the compression for you. It's doing the sampling, resampling for you, etc. So nicely, it actually is taking care of things for you. Now, one thing I'm going to mention, but I'm not going to cover any more than mentioning it, is you can also bring in up to 7, possibly 8 different mono WAV files with a naming convention, like BL, like underscore BL for back left, underscore FR for front right. And those will be all your different channels that go together to make a 7.1 or 5.1 surround sound soundtrack. Way beyond the scope of what we want to cover here, but just be aware when you're bringing your WAV files in, you do have that. There's a naming convention that can be used to make surround sound friendly results. But bringing your actual files in is just like any other assets. So going to samples, we're going to mono. What did I use? Wind and thunder. All right, I'll stay consistent. So let me just grab those 2 sound files. So wind and thunder. And I'll just drag them in. And there you go. We now have 2 Soundwave objects that we can use. And let's look at actually playing one of these sounds when we go. And that is, let's go back to our UI. It's the entire reason why we created this guy. And we'll wire up, get the button. We'll wire it up a clicked event. And as of 4.8, playing sounds from a UI like this is super, super simple. And in a 2D game, this is probably how you would often play your sounds anyways. And it's just called Play Sound 2D. And then you pick the sound effect you want. What are we in? Play wind. So wind. And since we're here, let's do it with thunder as well. Wire that event up. play sound 2D, and thunder. And that's it. So let's save, go back and run, and play wind. You hear the wind starts playing, and thunder. And I can start another thunder, and another. So that's how simple it is to actually play 2D sounds in Unreal Engine 4. So let's just stop that. Now, you may have noticed there's also one called Play Sound at Location, and this will give you simple positional audio. So you can actually play a sound with a location on the screen, such as where the player is, and it's actually quite a simple process too. Let's wire that in as well. Let's just come back, add a button here. So and copy and paste. And we shall dub the play at location. Assuming I have room. I don't. Oh, I do. Excellent. All right, and I'm just going to bring in a new sound effect for that one as well. Don't really have to, but makes it a little bit easier. So we'll bring in our crickets and drop them in. One thing I didn't show you is you can double click. It brings up a generic editor, but you can see the details of your sound class. You can set the volume, the pitch, etc. One of the things that's key about this play sound 2D and play sound at location is they're fire and forget. So once you've started the sound, you've got no control over it, other than at a global level. Like if you mute globally, they will all be shut down, but you can't pause it, fast forward it, rewind, etc., other than all sounds. So they're fire and forget sounds. You can trigger it, and then you're meant to move on. So there's no persistence there. Now, there are ways to actually control sounds after the fact. We'll see that shortly. There's a couple of things you can set here, and way beyond the scope what we want to talk about here. But there's a lot of built-in ability for subtitling, you can have it so you can mute different kind of channels, different sounds. You can change the compression quality. You can have the sound automatically loop, good for a soundtrack or whatever in the background. So you can set these properties on by double-clicking the sound wave file after you've created it. Anyways, back to what I was doing. So we now have our cricket sound. Let's drop back to our UI. Add a handler for this button. And we are going to need a location to play it, so we shall just do get player controller, and we will get the actor location. So we're going to play the sound where the actor currently is, and we just need play sound location, like so. So we pass in our location there. We choose our sound as normal, so we'll use our crickets here. Now you'll notice there's this drop down. There are more options you can set, volume, pitch, where to start within the sound effect, and you can set up an attenuation settings. I'm not going to, but you can. And now let's go ahead and save, compile, and run that. Okay. Now we got crickets. Now we've got, yeah, there they are. Hopefully you can hear that. It's a very quiet sound effect. So if you didn't hear that, it's because it's a very, very quiet one. That is, in fact, playing the cricket location. And as you move that around, it will move around as it's played back. Or sorry, it will play relative to the location it was played at. Again, fire and forget, so it won't move, but it will play to the location that was passed in when that function was called. All right, so that is playing sound. Now, sometimes also you're going to want to actually have the sound move around. You're going to want to attach it to nodes in the scene, and then have it, as that thing moves, the position of the sound moves accordingly. And this can also be done using an audio component, and that's what we're going to go ahead and do now. We're going to create a new character and then attach the component to it, and then yeah, so I'll just go ahead and do this. Can I create it this way? No, I can't. All right, so new blueprint class, all classes, paper character, select my character. All right, and we're also going to want a new button. Oops, stop that. My UI, go to the designer. We will copy. We will paste. All right, so we'll wire that up in a moment. And back. So we have our new character. I guess we should make a character out of it. It's going to take a couple of seconds because I need a sprite. That means I need a flipbook. All right, this is going to be annoying. Okay, so I'm going to create a flipbook. I'm going to need a sprite for said flipbook. Let me just use our logo. So let's create a sprite. Let's drop that into our flipbook. So I don't know why, but this actually causes some flickering having a single frame sprite. So 1 frame a second. Actually, let's do frames per second. 0.5. We have our frame. Let's zoom out, see what our result is. So there is our logo as our sole sprite of our character's flipbook. Obviously, our size is not ideal. Let's scale that guy down a little bit. So that works. So now we have our character for our game, and now let's go ahead and add the sound component to it. So it's just an audio, like so. And actually, it's done. But you'll see you have a bunch more options available for the audio component. Over here in details, you can see your key is going to be, you could set a default sound, which we shall go ahead and do it. Let's use our last available sound effect here is our music. So basically what I'm doing is I'm attaching the game's music to the character for no particular reason, but I needed to illustrate it somewhere. So we can have it so that this automatically plays that sound by attaching a sound to it here and having auto activate as true. So now you will find, if I save this, come back here, I need to now set up a game mode class. Sure, works for me. And our default pawn is now my character. Save, compile. And now when we run, it's automatically going to create our game sprite. And there is the background music being played, as you can hear. So that music will move around positionally with the character. Now you would obviously have it all the times. Like say you had a waterfall, brain fart. You have a waterfall in your scene that you want to have it babbling brook kind of noises coming out of it. You would do it. Then as you moved away from there, it would automatically update. So in this case, I've just done the soundtrack attached to the player character. So it's very simple. You see, it's just literally a matter of adding this audio component to it, and that's kind of it. It's that capable. Now, in that case, I set the sound using a property. Let's look at actually the code to go ahead and change that on the character. So we'll do it here. And instead of the music, we'll go ahead and we'll play thunder. So I'll show you the code to go ahead and change that. And using this code, you can actually make changes to the existing sound, unlike the earlier ones. So let's wire this guy up, doing our event handler right here. So let's see, we're going to need a couple things. We're going to get the player on, like so. And let's get the component. We want to get the audio component from our character pawn. And that's get component by class. And the class is audio component. Like so. And then it's an array being returned, so we just want to get zeroth element, so the first element of that array. And now let's use that guy. So with this code here, what we just did right here, all that's really doing is saying get the pawn, get the audio component of that pawn. So get this guy and then get this guy is what we've done right there. Where was I? And then, like I said, this is actually going to, you could potentially have more than one attached. So we're just saying, give me the first. And then now, let's use our last audio function, or last audio blueprint function of the day. And that is play sound attached. And so we have to pass in the audio component to use. And that's attached to component right there. We're going to use the, what did I say? Well, we'll do thunder. And what you'll see here is there's a lot of different options available. Kind of beyond the scope of what we want to cover here, so go ahead and play this stuff, play with this stuff as you want. But now we'll just go ahead and save and run. So there's our music, but when we click this, we get our thunder. And of course, these could be played in parallel as well. So that's kind of it. That is how audio is handled in Unreal Engine. Sorry, I may have cut out there if I duplicated up on you. Now, there's a bunch of stuff I haven't covered specifically, but there is one that is very, very, very handy and very, very easy to use. We're going to cover that quickly before we end this tutorial. And that is specifically sound cues. Now, sound cue, first off, I'm not an audio guy, so this goes way beyond my ability, but it's somewhat of sort of like a shader programming language for audio files. And it's pretty powerful. Allows you to do a hell of a lot of stuff that I don't understand. But it also, we're going to use a very simple example here. We're going to mix two sounds together to create a compound sound. And that's how a sound cue can be used. And the cool thing about a sound cue is anywhere we're using a sound wave right now, a sound cue can be used. So let's go ahead and create one. And it's just a matter of add new, sounds, and then sound cue. As you can see, there's reverb effects, there's dialogues, there's mixers, etc. Stuff that we're not touching. Attenuation, so for distance changes. We're not covering any of that today. We just want the basics you need for a 2D game, and I think we've covered almost all of it. Finally, we just have this cue here. We shall give it the intuitive name of my cue. And when we fire that guy up, you get this output node with the speaker here. And this is just like working with shaders, but with audio instead. And what we're going to do, again, is just add two sound waves, mix them together, and send them to output. And I will show you. As you can see, there's a whole lot in the palette. Beyond, you could loop sounds X number of times, etc. But you're making very complex, compound sounds out of simple things. So let's just say, so first off, we have wave player, I think. Come in when we pick our first sound. So we're going to mix our, say, thunder and our wind together. So there is thunder. There is wind. And then each one pins out like normal, like so. And we're going to use a mixer like that. And we'll bring our other one in. As you can see, we can keep adding more and mix in more and more shapes. So now that I've done that, I actually don't know. I imagine you can get rid of it that way. Yep. But let's just add one more then. We'll get some crickets going too. So crickets. Like that. And we'll just drag that to our output. And we go ahead and play it. And you hear your crickets, you hear your wind, and you hear your thunder. So now we've taken all three of these different sound waves and merged them into this one single cue. And you can see over here, there's a bunch of stuff I don't understand. I'm not going to get into it, but you can add oscillation, Doppler effect, looping. Well, looping I understand, but crossfading. So if you're a sound guy, you're probably looking at this going, oh, that's cool. I don't understand most of it, so I'm not going to cover it, but you can create these very elaborate sound setups in these cues. So now we've created our cue. Using it is trivial. Let's head on back to our UI. And then instead of, I'm not going to bother creating a new button. I'll just hijack one of the existing ones. So let's see. On play wind, now instead of wind, just play your cue like that. And compile, save, and let's do a play. And now if I hit play wind, we actually get the wind, the thunder, and the crickets, all from that single sound cue playing as one event. So you can create these cues and use them anywhere you would a sound wave. Very powerful system that can be built up. And what I've just shown you right here, the very minimal bits of sound that I understand, that was more than enough to handle making a game, or 2D game anyways. All right, so I hope you enjoyed that. If there are more advanced topics you want me to cover in a different tutorial, things like global settings or queuing soundtracks, things that you're just basically building a more elaborate version of what we just covered here. But if you trip or stumble on those things and you want me to get into a bit more detail, let me know, and I might do a follow-up for it. But that is playing audio in an Unreal Engine 4 2D game. Hope you enjoyed that. Thank you very much. Bye.